The purpose of tonight's forum, as you gather from the title, is as an opportunity for people who are passionate about social justice, equality, workers' rights, environmental protection, to get together and talk about what this federal election means, to situate this federal election, and also to give an opportunity to voices in the federal election process that aren't usually heard in the mass media to be heard.
It's about bringing people into politics and for us to discuss the issues, for us to decide what's best, and for us to vote on and make the policies that's going to give us the best kind of society. It's about humanness and human need, and not about servicing just the economy. The economy should be there to service us, not the other way around.
Because we are trying to put Aboriginal voices into Parliament. Aboriginal people are unrepresented in so many areas other than incarceration and in the justice system in Australia. And it's quite shameful. And our vision is for an Australia that values and respects its First Nations peoples and provides them with a strong and undiluted voice in the most powerful political structure in the land, which is federal parliament. At the moment, in Australia, there's actually currently no Indigenous representation at federal level.
We will work towards having education, public schools funded to set the benchmark for education in our community. It is appalling to see that our funding for education has dropped down to the lowest levels within the OECD, and that people are now taking their children out of public schools because they're worried about the quality of education in our public schools. It is an absolute crying shame that that's the case in Australia.
You know, and the education system needs to be changed to provide our children with the real learning skills for life. You know, they need more independent living skills. Not just, you know, the standard maths, science, social studies, blah, blah, blah. They need to learn stuff that is real. You know what I mean? Real everyday life. We're on Noongar country, so what we'd like to see is Noongar language being taught in schools. You know, Noongar language. It's still alive. A lot of us still use it. A lot of us speak Noongar English because we're so, you know, we've been so assimilated, you know, but we still have all of our words, all of our languages.
We've been pushing for a proposal for a publicly funded dental health system. There are 500,000 people on the waiting lists for dental treatment in Australia, and the average waiting period is 27 months. So dental care is such an important issue for people's general health, and it's a crying shame that in a country with the wealth of Australia that we don't have a publicly funded appropriate dental system.
That's why we'd love to see healing centres. I'm not a fan of any sort of medication. I refuse to buy into the pharmaceutical companies and their profits. I do not take any medication. I don't even have a Panadol. So if I've got a headache, I'll go and have a drink of water, because most headaches are caused by dehydration anyway. So what we'd like to see is more healing centres, you know, more natural medicines being used. You know, we live in a country where we are lucky to be able to have people that have the knowledge of the natural bush medicines, you know, of the things that, you know, we were given by the Creator. You know what I mean? Like, we don't need to manufacture all of these things to make money for big businesses, which are connected into the government system anyway. So it's all a farce as far as I'm concerned. And
so acting on climate change, we need to have no more ifs, buts or maybes. The climate science tells us we have till 2010 to act. We have till 2010 to act. So that science tells us we need to reduce emissions by 60% within 10 years, otherwise we face the runaway climate change. So we won't actually be politicking on how to implement those technologies. We'll be using money, and we'll probably tax through the roof by then, to deal with the effects of climate change. We also want to see a price on carbon, and believe that that is essential to achieving the funding that's necessary to be able to support the renewable energy industries, and also to be able to provide a just transition, so that we have funds to be able to inject into new industries to provide new jobs for people who were previously working in industries that are carbon and pollution intensive.
I tell you right now that my people are the best people to consult when it comes to protecting the environment. So what we do would be develop environmental policies by talking with our elders, our ones that know all about the land.
Scott Ludlam has a bill before the Parliament at the moment which is calling for changes that require any government that wishes to go to war to put that before the Parliament.
Currently, a government, as an executive, can simply choose to go to war, and that's what our government has done in Iraq and Afghanistan, despite overwhelming community opposition to particularly the Iraq war.
The cost of the wars too, there's billions of dollars that go into that. Now we could actually put that into climate change, technology, and then we can share those resources. Once we develop those technologies, we can share those with those countries, other countries, and then we can actually remove the need for war, because war is fundamentally about resources. So if we're not buying for their oil or fossils or resources, and we're sharing technologies that benefit all of us, we actually remove the need for war. We definitely should accept refugees, because a lot of them come from these countries. If we're going to be involved with, I can't think of a word other than something a bit, if we're involved in impacting on their countries, for want of a better word, then we should also accept the result of that impact that we're having. We are destroying their local infrastructure. The majority of people that are killed in those wars are civilians. They're the people that are fleeing those countries.
Asylum seekers are, of course, a key issue in this election. We are heartbroken, I guess, that we're facing yet another election where people are being demonised solely for the purposes of political gains. We see that ours is a sensible, reasonable, common sense and compassionate approach to people who are fleeing persecution. Of course, asylum seekers deserve protection in our community. People should be processed in the community and should have opportunities to live within our community. It is no crime to seek asylum. We will continue to campaign on that issue. One of the proposals that we're quite excited about is Scott Ludlam's fully costed proposal for light rail across the whole of the metropolitan area. There are 3 phases of that happening in the Fremantle area. One is connecting light rail from the central Fremantle down to Coburn, and another is linking it out to Murdoch and the Fiona Stanley Health Clinic. There are hundreds of different reasons why light rail is exciting, and I can't believe that I'm here talking about a train, but for me the most exciting reasons about that is because having fast, efficient, affordable public transport means that people have a quality of access to the services within our community.
This alliance fully supports the Greens' light rail plan for Fremantle. That's absolutely awesome. It's not just, it's for people, it's an equity issue as well. For people with low incomes, either they can't afford cars or they can't afford to drive their cars anymore.
We support the light rail transport idea. We think that's fantastic. At with the party, discussing it in the party room. Sorry, I'm still laughing. My head's in Lara's mind. And so we support that, but we'd love to see it everywhere. We'd like to see it metro-wide, because if we really want to lower carbon emissions, if we have the light rail transport everywhere, then that's going to take a lot of cars off the road and, a lot more people out.
The other thing is the silence on Aboriginal issues in this election. Total silence. Why? Because they used it as a political election tool, like asylum seekers now, but in the previous elections it was their tamper to save the children of the NT. And that's a load of shit, because the level of child abuse occurs in the white community as much as it does in the Aboriginal community. So it really was much more about than saving the children. It was about grabbing resource-rich lands. Let's call it for what it is. And let's just say, the reason they can't bring it up in this election campaign is they would have to acknowledge that the failures of their policies, the failures. But they don't want to talk about it, because then, the rest of us might actually cotton on and say, they were actually doing something else there rather than saving the children. There are resource-rich lands there that these private industry want.
Senator Scott Ludlam has prioritised the anti-nuclear campaign, and in particular the issues around Mackay station and the continuing insistence of this government, both Labor and Liberal governments, on pushing uranium mining and waste onto remote Aboriginal communities. There's one reason that I'm particularly excited about participating in the election this year, and that is that there's a potential that the Greens may be voted in to hold the balance of power in the Senate. It's talked about quite a lot in the mass media, and we have held it previously in the federal parliament, and we've held it for a number of years in the state parliament here. While it might sound scary and it might sound really quite powerful, the only time that that actually counts is when Liberal and Labor don't vote together. And in our experience, that's a very few number of occasions.
We believe that the Liberal and Labor are both on the same page, and I'm actually dreading this election, and I've been just calling to the spirits to make it a hung parliament, because oh my God, like, I don't even want Tony Abbott or Julia Gillard, telling me what to do with my life, because at the moment that's what they do.